I give the floor to Mr. Miroslav Jenča.
Thank you, Mr. President. On Saturday, 24 August, Ukraine marked its 33rd Independence Day. The day also marked a somber milestone of 2.5 years of Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine, launched in blatant violation of the UN Charter and international law. On this occasion, we reiterate the United Nations' full commitment to the sovereignty, independence, and territorial integrity of Ukraine within its internationally recognized borders. Over the past 30 months, millions of Ukrainians have witnessed unimaginable death, devastation, and destruction. According to the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights, since 24 February 2022, 11,662 civilians have been killed, 639 of them children. 24,207 civilians have been injured, 1,577 of them children. This July was the deadliest month for civilians in Ukraine in almost 2 years. At least 219 civilians were killed and 1,018 injured. Tragically, these figures only grow as missiles, shells, and drones continue to hit cities, towns, and villages across Ukraine daily. In the past 2 days, hundreds of missiles and drones reportedly killed at least 11 people and hit energy and other critical civilian infrastructure across Ukraine. Damage was reported in 15 regions, with at least 11 energy facilities affected. This vast destruction further aggravates the already precarious access to energy and water for millions of people. Days earlier, on 24 August, amidst escalating fighting in eastern Ukraine, a missile struck a hotel in the town of Kramatorsk, Donetsk region of Ukraine. A Reuters staff member was killed and 4 journalists injured. Similar attacks on hotels, restaurants, markets, and shopping areas in frontline communities have been reported. We are also concerned about the impact of the spread of fighting on the civilian population on both sides of the Ukraine-Russia border, including in the Sumy and Kharkiv regions of Ukraine, as well as in the Kursk, Belgorod, and Bryansk regions of the Russian Federation. Following the start of Ukraine's incursion into the Kursk region on 6 August, local Russian officials reported at least 12 people killed and 121 others injured. According to local officials, at least 130,000 people have been evacuated from the region. OHCHR has not received additional reports of civilian casualties or related harm and is not able to confirm these reports as it has no access to the Russian Federation and the areas impacted by the fighting. As the Secretary General repeatedly underlined, attacks on civilians and civilian infrastructure are unacceptable, no matter where they occur. These attacks are prohibited by international humanitarian law. They must end immediately. We urge all sides to act responsibly and ensure the protection of civilians. Mr. President, we are alarmed regarding reported incidents around the nuclear facilities in Ukraine and Russia. In August, the International Atomic Energy Agency, IAEA, reported deterioration of the nuclear safety situation at Ukraine's Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. On 17 August, a drone strike hit the road around the site perimeter. On 11 August, significant fire at one of the cooling towers resulted in considerable damage. The IAEA team has also reported periodic intense military activity near the plant, including sounds of frequent explosions, repetitive heavy machine gun and rifle fire and artillery at various distances from the plant. Concerns are also rising over nuclear safety and security in the Kursk region of the Russian Federation. On 22 August, the Russian Federation informed the International Atomic Energy Agency that remains of a drone were found within the territory of the Kursk nuclear power plant. We welcome yesterday's visit to the Kursk nuclear power plant by IAEA Director General Grossi and his personal efforts to ensure nuclear safety and security in Russia and Ukraine. We also commend IAEA's ongoing monitoring of the situation at all of Ukraine's nuclear sites, including Europe's largest plant in Zaporizhia. We continue to call for maximum restraint and vigilance to avoid a nuclear incident, the consequences of which could be catastrophic to the region and the world. Mr. President, after a decade of conflict in the east of Ukraine and occupation of the Autonomous Republic of Crimea and the city of Sevastopol, and following 2.5 years of full-scale war, the suffering of the people in Ukraine continues unabated. Women in Ukraine are facing particular risks. They make up 56% of the 15 million people in need of humanitarian assistance. We are concerned about the reported 40% increase in cases of gender-based violence. In frontline areas, particularly in the east and south of Ukraine, entire villages and towns have been either partially or completely devastated. According to OHCHR, 546 medical facilities and 1,306 educational facilities have been damaged or destroyed. As we have previously briefed, humanitarian operations in some areas lack access to people in need. We remain deeply concerned about the 1.5 million people who we are unable to reach in parts of Donetsk, Kherson, Luhansk, and Zaporizhia regions of Ukraine occupied by the Russian Federation. Like all others living close to the front line in Ukraine, they require urgent access to health care and medicine, food and clean drinking water. In accordance with international humanitarian law, it is imperative that impartial humanitarian relief be facilitated for all civilians in need. The hostilities have displaced millions of Ukrainian people who continue to need our support. Nearly 3.7 million people have been internally displaced within Ukraine. More than 6.6 million Ukrainian refugees have been recorded globally. This year, together with our partners, the United Nations aims to reach 8.5 million people with life-saving assistance, including through its winter response plan. So far, donors have provided 41% of the $3.1 billion required under the Humanitarian Needs and Response Plan. We thank them for their generous contributions. However, the already dire humanitarian situation is expected to worsen as hostilities show no signs of abating and the winter approaches. Mr. President, we welcome the recent exchanges of prisoners of war facilitated by the United Arab Emirates and other actors. We encourage the sides to step up these efforts to bring all prisoners of war home. However, we express serious concern about the treatment of prisoners of war held by the Russian Federation. The United Nations Human Rights Monitoring Mission in Ukraine has reported that prisoners of war were subjected to prolonged and routine torture, dire conditions of internment, and repeated sexual violence. Prisoners of war must be treated in accordance with international humanitarian law. Mr. President, we cannot allow the horrific devastation of this war to become normalized. Now, more than ever, it is critical for us to speak with one voice to ensure protection of civilians and to step up our urgent efforts towards peace. Next month, the world leaders will gather for the Summit of the Future to forge new international consensus on how we deliver a better present and safeguard the future. We hope that this summit will help enhance global collaboration at a time when it is most urgently needed. And we hope that these efforts will also bring us closer to laying the foundations for a just, lasting and comprehensive peace in Ukraine in line with the UN Charter, international law, and the resolutions of the General Assembly. The United Nations remains ready to support any meaningful efforts to this end. Thank you.
I thank